The Revolutionary War was perhaps the most influential war in American history. Many historians and people alike believe that the war was one off of the 76 spirit in unconventional warfare, yet almost all fail to recognize the importance of communication and nationwide confrontation. In later wars, the development of technology had allowed for key advancements in communication, such as the telegraph, telephone, radio, and even the internet. However, in 1776, maintaining a key line of communication in a wartime setting required concrete planning, a system of transportation, and most importantly, secrecy. George Washington's Culper Spy Ring embodied these very characteristics. While the Culper Spy Ring had been largely unknown to the public, its triumphs in covert communication changed the course of the American Revolutionary War. Organized by former General George Washington and Major Benjamin Tallmadge, this Culper Spy Ring was a complex network of spies that had a major impact on how war intelligence was spread during the Revolutionary War. The idea of a spy ring was first conceived by Washington when Nathan Hale, a spy for the Continental Army, was caught in a British-occupied New York. Following Hale's execution, a resounding message was sent to George Washington that there was a need of a covert, organized communication network to not only infiltrate the British-controlled New York, but also to win the whole war. Washington put his idea into motion, along with the help of Major Benjamin Tallmadge, and officially began the Culper Spy Ring in 1778. The name Culper was first conceived by Washington in reference to Culpeper County in Virginia, his home state. It also served as enigmatic names for the two most important spies in the Revolutionary War, Abraham Woodhull and Robert Townsend, who adopted their aliases Samuel Culper Sr. and Samuel Culper Jr., respectively. While many people had a large impact on the Culper Spy Ring, the main few people are as follows. Number 1. General George Washington, co-founder and the main recipient of information. Number 2. Major Benjamin Tallmadge, founder and main organizer of codes and ciphers, along with recruitment. Number 3. Abraham Woodhull, original spy on the ground, moved to establish a home base for lines of communication. And number 4. Robert Townsend, main information gatherer after Woodhull, for a majority of the spy ring's existence, wrote the letters that were delivered to Washington. These two men were instrumental in the development and execution of almost all operations that took place during the Revolution. These operations were focused on the most important city of the time, New York. August 22, 1776 marked the start of the Battle of Long Island. 5 days later, the British defeated the forces of Washington and thus started their 7-year occupation of New York. At the beginning of these 7 grueling years, Major Benjamin Tallmadge was tasked by General Washington to create an elite team of informants. Townsend turned to his trusted ally Abraham Woodhull to set up an initial line of communication out of New York. Abraham Woodhull, being born in Setauket, New York, was perfect for the job as spymaster. Being exceptionally familiar with the land and having a sister in Manhattan, Woodhull was able to go unnoticed for over 1 year. He passed communications with little help to Townsend and Washington until June of 1779. Then, a close call with the British showing up at his home in Setauket to arrest him spooked him into recruiting more help. This help came in the form of Robert Townsend. Robert Townsend, born November 25, 1753, in Oyster Bay, New York, was a highly secretive and cautious individual. With the only known portrait of him being a rough sketch, even General Washington was not aware of his actual identity. This boded well for his actions as a spy, since Townsend, or Culper Jr.'s primary objective was to remain in the city and to collect all the useful information he can, as directed by General Washington. He would do this by mixing and mingling with citizens, refugees, and even British officers. He was to gather details on British movement within the city and in the waters, noting tactical ways they could be tampered with or destroyed. He was to note the number of men destined for the defenses of the city, the fortifications they possessed, and the mental and physical state of these men. Then came the long and dangerous task of transporting this information back to Major Tallmadge and General Washington. First, Townsend would write a letter. This letter would be shrouded in mystery, written in a complex code, and only to be opened by members of the Culper Spy Ring. Second, the letter Townsend wrote would be given to a courier, most often Austin Rowe, codenamed 724. Rowe would then deliver this message by hand to Woodhull in Setauket, Long Island, who would then add any information he gathered. After Woodhull added his information, he would wait for a signal from neighbor and fellow spy Anna Strong. Strong would signal Woodhull by placing specific clothes on a clothesline. This would signal a specific location where the fifth person in the chain, the whaleboat captain Caleb Brewster, was on the entire shoreline of Connecticut. When Brewster got the message, he would travel down the shore to Washington's headquarters in Morristown, New Jersey. When he arrived on the shore, a group of Talmadge's dragoons, a division of mounted infantry, would carry the message to Washington's headquarters in Morristown, New Jersey. While this process did slow down the rate at which information was spread, it was the safest way of keeping the identities of the spies secret. Despite its effectiveness, this method of transmitting information was not the only system that was utilized. Information was disseminated through other forms of written works. Newspapers were often used as a medium to spread covert information through secret messages in code. James J., the brother of John J., was the creator of an invisible ink technique called the sympathetic stain. This technique made use of a solution that was created out of a variety of acids that appeared invisible. The invisible ink would be used to transcribe messages between the lines of an ordinary note to mask the real intention of the letter. When placed over a candle or any heat source, the secret message would reveal itself. Other forms of letter concealment were also used, such as mask letters. Mask letters were also used as a means of transmitting the information. This would be done through specifically shaped documents. Such documents were meant to be read by a recipient who would place a shape template over the full letter. The letter's true message would then emerge inside the mask borders. To guarantee that the trick would go undetected, the letter and the masks were usually transported by different couriers. Not only were the methods of transporting sensitive information refined, but the actual message itself was also encoded for further protection. The main way that the Culper Spy Ring hid information in letters was by using a complex system of codes and ciphers. Major Benjamin Talmadge developed a unique dictionary of numbers, 1 to 710, corresponding in alphabetical order to words. These words were reserved for the most commonly used, like artillery, which was number 46, and British, number 72. Past 710, the numbers then corresponded to the names of the members of the spy ring. These members include General Washington, 711, John Bolton, 721, which is Talmadge's undercover name, Samuel Culper, 722, Culper Jr., 723, and many more. Following 726 and leading to 763 include important places in the American Revolution, including New York, 727, Long Island, 728, and almost all states on the East Coast following. To express more complex ideas, a tilde will be used. This adds s or ed to the end of words. When any of these numbers were used to express information, the number would need a period after it to avoid confusion. When a message or piece of information needed to be expressed that wasn't in the list of 750 plus words, a cipher was used to disguise the intelligence. This cipher was a simple linking cipher, letters corresponding to other letters. For example, if someone would like to say head, the code would be BIEH. These letters would be underlined to indicate that it was to be deciphered. If a number would need to be covertly expressed, a linking cipher would also be used, this time between numbers and letters. The seemingly random letter would be double underlined to indicate it would also need to be deciphered. The use of covert communication to transfer sensitive information went on to change the tides of the Revolutionary War. By staying true to his inconspicuous identity, the Culper Spy Ring, under the leadership of General George Washington and Major Benjamin Talmadge, along with top-class spies such as Abraham Woodhull and Robert Townsend, helped the American Army gain the cutting edge on many occasions. The innovations in communication that the main members of the Culper Spy Ring developed demonstrates their significance in the Revolutionary War. The importance of information and the way it is communicated cannot be understated, and the Culper Spy Ring excelled in providing both in a secretive way. As George Washington once said, "There is nothing so likely to produce peace as to be well prepared to meet an enemy."